Okay, thank you very much for coming back. So now I'm going to share my views on the property market itself. I'm the head of research for Huttons Asia. So, in Huttons itself, this is our pledge to our loved ones and also our clients. So I think let's all play our part to flatten the curve so that we can overcome this virus in the country. You can follow Huttons on our social media pages like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. Just search for Huttons Group and then just click like as well as follow us. Then you will be kept in the loop on all our upcoming seminar itself. We are going to have a few more seminars coming up in May. That will take place in the first week of May as well, all the way until the end of May itself. So first off, next we'll have one that is on the 6th of May, 8 p.m. and then 9th of May, 3 p.m. So do look out for that. And if you are interested to find out more on what the presenter is going to share, please sign up for the seminar. If you want to find out more about, keep yourself updated about everything in the property market itself, just also sign up for our blog and newsletter. Our blog is actually on our corporate webpage. Newsletter wise, you can scan the QR code at the bottom of the screen, and you can actually be directed to a page, and then you just key in your email, then you will be also subscribed to the newsletter. All our Huttons associates are subscribed to this newsletter already. So if you do not want to go through the hassle of doing that, just approach your Huttons associate and they will be happy to forward the newsletter to you as well. Thank you very much. So this the disclaimer. Okay, I think when we want to talk about investing, or when you want to talk about buying anything, the most basic of all is actually to look at demand and supply. Just take a look at the example of surgical mask. This is the best example now. When there was a very huge demand for that, what happens, and the supply wasn't able to catch up, what happens to the price of surgical mask? It shot up. And then everybody was trying everywhere, running everywhere, trying to buy surgical masks. But currently, there are a lot of supply coming back into the market. So the price for surgical masks now, the 3-ply one that I'm referring to, has actually come down by a bit, but it is still much higher than what we are used to before the this pandemic times itself. So it is the same principle that we are going to apply today for the property market. We look at the supply and then we also look at the demand, so that from there we will be able to make an informed judgment as to whether the market is in a undersupply situation, oversupply, or there's a lot of demand chasing after limited supply itself. Okay, first thing off is supply. Supply in the market. Where do we see supply in the market? The supply of land for residential development, or for the matter, or even you are looking at commercial and industrial development itself, can only come from two sources. Public sources, which is the government land sales itself, they will come out with the supply every half a year. So like on the 28th of February every year, they will tell you what is the supply. They will look at the first half of the year as well as second half. They will announce that the supply itself. So it's always on the last day of the month itself. Then they tell you the supply for the next half itself. So right now, later on, I will share about what is the number that they are looking at for the first half of 2020. Then the other source of supply for land for residential development is actually from the private sources, which is through your en bloc or collective sales. So where are these coming from now in this current market? I will also show some numbers so that you will know where are the numbers for en bloc. And another important thing that affects the supply of land is actually government policies. It's like the entire of Singapore is actually so-called tightly planned by the government. They do specify which plot of land can be for what use. And certain point in time, they make changes to policy that will also affect how the whole supply is. For example, in 2018, they actually make a change to one policy, which is the average dwelling units that you can build on one plot of land. So that has a very big impact on the supply of residential units moving forward. So now we look at public sources. Now, supply from the government land sales as of the first half of 2020 is actually at its lowest since the first half of 2016. Just look at this chart here. This is just on the confirmed list itself. I did not put in the reserve list. Okay, I explain now the two things. Government land sales will have two supply. One is the confirmed list. The second one is the reserve list. So on the confirmed list, it means that the government will push out for sale for developers to tender at a fixed date, irregardless of whether the market condition is good or the market condition is no good, or whether there's demand, whether there's no demand. So the government will just push out that plot of land for sale. Whereas the reserve list, the government will put the piece of land there. If developer thinks that this piece of land is good and they want to tender for this, then they have to submit a bid to the government. And if the government thinks that this bid is acceptable to them, then they will release and move this plot of land from the reserve list to the confirmed list and set a date for the sale of this particular parcel of land itself. So the confirmed list is something that is more or less certain that this supply will flow into the market. Right now, in the first half, we are seeing about 1,007 or maybe close to 1,008 that the government will push out. There's one plot of land that will be launched in May, which is at Tanah Merah Kecil. And in June itself, there's another plot at Jalan Anak Bukit. That is the part of the entire integrated transport hub itself. But we need to take note of one thing is that the government has the right to suspend the confirmed list if they feel that the market is somehow they feel that the market, there is no demand for the confirmed list site. This is what they did actually in 2009. The entire year of 2009, first half and second half, there was no land on the confirmed list. All the land from the government land sales, which the government wants to sell, are actually on the reserve list itself. So this is actually one thing that the government can take should they want to. But as it is right now, when we are speaking, they did not make any announcement yet. So we will take it as these two parcels of land are still going ahead with the tender. Just take note of this number, but already we have sold quite a few parcels in the first 3 months of the year. Now, en bloc, this chart shows us the number of sites that is sold all the way since 1995 until 2020. I will want to bring your attention to the two boxes that I highlighted in red over there. These are the period that coincides with very high number of en bloc sites being sold. The first, of course, 2005, 2007, there was one, but we look specifically at 2010 to 2012. Why? This is the point in time where the government starts putting in cooling measures, like your additional buyer stamp duty itself, ABSD, introduced in 2011. And then the next cycle that we have here that started to pick up in the en bloc market is in 2016, and then it slowed down in 2018 because the government put in another cooling measure again in 2018. Just look at the gap between 2011 and 2016. It's a 5-year gap. Why is that so? It's because the ABSD gives developer a 5-year period for them to sell all the units in that particular project itself. Otherwise, they will be penalized even if they have one unit that's unsold. So it means that whenever developer has acquired the land in 2011, they will be focused on selling out all the units before they will go into the market again to buy another parcel of land. So this means that this 5-year gap that we're seeing here is going to be repeated again unless the ABSD rules is being tweaked. So since we have the en bloc cycle that has started in 2016 and ended in 2018, the next en bloc cycle again could be in 2021 because it's a 5-year gap from 2016. But of course, that is another forecast that we are looking at here. But right now, the thing is en bloc or collective sales is at a low, all-time low, because there is a lot of developers who have already bought a lot of land and they are satisfied with their current land bank and they are focused on selling out their units. When developers are focused on selling out their units, it's also good news for buyers. This means that the price will be stable, as well as they want buyers to come in and to buy, and they will be pricing their projects attractively to buyers as well. So we have government land sales, which are all-time low, and en bloc probability also at an all-time low now. So it means that the supply from these two sources are very, very low. Now we also look at, say, because whatever has been sold during 2016 to 2018 and launched progressively into the market, when will they be completed? They will progressively be completed from 2020 all the way until 2023. And when we look at the numbers here and take an annual average, it works out to about 10,000 units. This is the pipeline supply. Annually, 10,000 units. Remember this number. Later on, we will match this with the demand annually. Then you will see whether we are having an oversupply or undersupply situation. Now, just now I mentioned about government policies. This is the policy that I'm talking about, where URA actually cuts the number of units that can be built on a parcel of land. What would that impact be? They were saying that outside of the central area, now the average size has been increased from what? Average 70 square meter to 85 square meters. This means that the average size of a unit on a parcel of land now must fulfill the 85 square meter rule. So overall, the decrease in the number of dwelling units is about 18% on a piece of land. So it means that the supply itself for the parcel of land is now lesser by 18%. And for certain specific areas, 9 control areas that they have, it is even more stringent. It is up by 30 square meter. They have to fulfill an average unit size of 100 square meter. This means that the dwelling units is going to drop by even larger amount of 30%. So these areas, which we can share in the subsequent seminar itself, where are these areas? But right now, it is sufficient for us to know this, that first, government land sales is at the all-time low since 2016. En bloc property is low. And then we have this larger unit size, which will affect all the projects that is actually launched in 2020 onwards, where the unit size is larger, and it means that number of dwelling units is less, going to be lesser. So all these three comes together, it means one thing: supply is getting lesser. Now, we talk about supply. How about demand? After all, if supply is lesser, demand is also lesser, then there's also a price equilibrium. But if demand maintains as it is, but supply comes down, if you look at the very, very first supply and demand chart I show, it also points to the fact that prices will go up. How does demand look like? Demand for property is very dependent on one thing: population growth. As the population increases, there is a need to actually house this population increase in properties, a place where to stay. Whether it is in HDB flats or whether it's in private properties itself, you need to have a place for these people to stay in. And over the past 10 years, the compounded growth for population is about 1.2%. And we take note that in the last 2 years, government has been slowly increasing the growth rate for population. Right now, as of mid-2019, the population is 5.7 million. And they have a target in mind, which we need to jot back our memory, is that under their population white paper, they have a target of 6.5 to 6.9 million itself. Let's say if it's 6.5 million, which if they manage to achieve that, 6.5 versus 5.7 now, it means from 2020 all the way until 2030, this 11-year period itself, we're going to see a population increase of about 800,000. Where are we going to house these 800,000 people? Are we building enough to house these 800,000 people? The changing demographics in Singapore is also driving a lot of demand for properties. Let us look at 2010 to 2019. Just look at the box where I highlighted in yellow. In red now. These are what? This red one, that means it corresponds to the pie that is actually yellow. These are people who are living alone, singles. They can be singles in their 30s, 40s, or they can be elderly who are actually like the lone parent there, one person itself. But by and large, this changing demographics of single has increased by a lot, from about 140,000 in 2010 to more than 200,000 in 2019. And the other big impact on the property market is that there is an increasing number of couple without children. From 157,000 in 2010, what we have now is 260,000, an increase of 100,000. And that explains why this amount here, all this works out to about 170,000 in terms of this demand. People are buying up what? Your 1-bedroom as well as your 2-bedroom unit, because they do not need a very big space. That is all they need. Of course, not everybody will go to the private market. Some will go to the HDB market. But we see an increasing number of people going to the private market to buy private properties. And this is actually shown in these two charts here. In 2010, the number of people living in your condominiums and apartments itself is about 11.5%. Fast forward to 2019, this proportion has increased by almost 5 percentage points. 5 percentage points is a lot. Why? Because on the entire island-wide basis, the number of so-called HDB flats as well as private HDB flat, we currently have slightly more than 1 million, and private we are having about 350,000 private units that's actually occupied. So 5 percentage point from here is you can multiply, and you also know that how many people are actually moving into that. And that is why the demand for private properties over the past 10 years, for 2010 to 2019, has been very robust. On average, the annual average is about 11,500 units. If you remember the earlier chart where I show you our upcoming supply in the pipeline from 2020 until 2024, 2020 until 24, that is a 5-year. The annual supply is about 10,000 units. Whereas our demand here is about 11,000 based on the past. So if this continues to hold moving forward, and bear in mind that the government will also increase the population, it means that we may not be building enough to satisfy the demand in the market. So if we have low supply, but we have this demand, assuming it stays at this level, it means one thing is that prices will increase in the medium to long term. And talking about people buying, right now the market is in a very stable state. because there is almost non-existent speculation in the market. In the mid-90s, during the Asia financial crisis, we have sub-sales. Sub-sales generally refer to people selling the units even before completion. That means they could, in the mid-90s, we have people queuing up to buy a unit in a show flat and then selling this queue number to other people just for a very quick buy on the spot. So they're just spending a few hours queuing up, I can sell the queue number. So, or even after that, when they buy the property, have the option, they sell the option quickly in the market in the next day or so for a quick buck itself. So that was the level of speculation then in the mid-90s during the Asia financial crisis. And then we may move forward to 2008. The level of speculation has come down, but there is still some 13% of transactions that are actually sub-sales. So when the government introduced more cooling measures subsequently starting from 2011 onwards, you can see that that is a very, very discernible trend that number of sub-sale is actually slowing down. Right now, in the first quarter of the year, sub-sale is about 0.9%. This is almost non-existent at all. It means that when you do not have speculative buying in the market will stay stable, and you are very unlikely to see distressed sale also. Not only forgetting that the number of uncompleted as well as unsold units in the market has been coming down for the past 9 months itself. This particular cycle, what we are seeing is that as the first quarter of 2019 was the peak in terms of unsold numbers. That was more than 30,000 units, you can see from the chart here, about 37, about there. And it has slowly come down to only about now below 30,000 is about 29,000 units that's unsold right now. And this has been coming down. It shows that there is a lot of genuine demand in the market that is coming in to buy properties in Singapore. This shows that demand is there itself. And like what John said, this circuit breaker and a lot of other containment policies by economies around the world is actually an engineered slowdown. So when we have an engineered slowdown, it means that all this demand is actually artificially compressed at this particular point in time. Now, where do we go from here? Now that we have shown you numbers that supply is actually coming down, demand is robust, speculation is non-existent, and where do we go? Because after all, if you read in the papers everything, it's a fact that property prices has come down by some 1% in the first quarter of the year. John has shared his view on the global economy, which I'm not going to touch on that because I'm not an expert in that, but we try to see where our macro trading partners, our major trading partners are doing in terms of their economy itself. First of all, of course, we look at China. China is opening up their factories so that they can start to manufacture again. And what are they doing now is that producing a lot of masks, ventilators, which they are sending overseas to help a lot of countries as well. And when this happened, the PMI for China itself has jumped up after they have fallen quite a fair bit when they actually locked down part of the countries to contain the virus. Not only that, in EU itself, Europe, they are also preparing to ease some of the lockdown measures. So you have countries like Austria, Denmark itself, looking at all this. Some of them are allowing, like in Spain, allowing the children to go back to school. So they are taking some cautious steps to opening up. When they do that and start to open up their economy, it means that the economy can still find its footing back, and then economy, all the factories, the service, everything can continue to go back as it was before that. And even US, of course, we don't know how certain all these are going to be, but they plan to actually open up for business in May. But then again, Donald Trump has already given some guidelines, but he said that Whether the country is going open up for business is up to the individual governors of the city itself. So then again, it's not up to the federal government to decide, it's actually up to individual city governor. So if they do open up, it also means that the factory, the production, everything will start coming back again. What does it mean for Singapore? These are the major trading partners for Singapore. Because Singapore is so dependent on trade, our trade numbers is actually close to 3 times of our GDP. So when they open up and they start to produce, Singapore will also benefit because we also produce some of the intermediate goods that they are using in the final consumer product. And China being such a huge consumer market, including US being such a huge consumer market itself, it is very good news for Singapore. So when that happens, it means that when we also slowly open our economy after the circuit breaker on 1st of June, we should see some of this demand coming back to our factories, coming back to our services sector as well. And that will actually help to cushion some of the impact from the circuit breaker that we had in April as well as May. Now the thing is, this famous quote from Mark Twain says that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. What it means that you don't get to see the same thing happening again and again, but there are similar patterns. And with this, we try to look back at what we have seen in the past and perhaps get some insight as to what might possibly happen also in this current situation. We look back at the SARS period itself, because they say that this virus is belong to the SARS family, everything. So we had our first SARS case in March 2003. Then we have all SARS eradicated in July 2003. The demand-wise for property was not affected much. Just look at the 6 months before we had our first SARS case in March itself. So from 2002 Q3 to 2002 Q4, developers sold 2,800 units. Whereas for 2003 Q2 until 2003 Q3, they sold 3,100 units. So the demand during SARS period was not affected. But of course, this time round, like what Mark Twain has said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Just that this time, property sales can't continue because of the circuit breaker. Therefore, this demand now is actually being contained as well. So we cannot use back the whole same thing and say that property demand for the next 6 months will not be affected, because after all, we have April and May where we can't open the show flats to just anybody who wants to buy to go in and see. We have to do things the virtual way. But this does give us some insight that demand for property is there and it will come back after all these are cleared. And the property market recovers very strongly after the virus outbreak. Take for example SARS. In 2003 we had SARS. Just look at how the property price index moved from 2003 all to the way to the peak of the market in 2008. Based on the price index from URA, prices actually went up by more than 50%. And even for the H1N1 period from 2009, where we had the first H1N1, all the way until 2013, which was the peak of the market, property prices actually went up by more than 60%. So if this cycle, this thing is also repeated in this particular virus period, it could possibly happen that the market also recovers strongly after the virus. Just have some examples for you. Of course, the project name I masked out. That you can see that people who have bought during the SARS period, these are all the people who bought during 2003. And then when they sold off, the years will tell you how long they hold. They have made huge profits. Just look at the largest profit that we can see here. In D9, this particular project, this owner actually made 1.2 million by just holding on to his property for 5 years. That means he went in 2003, he sold in 2008, and he made 1.2 million. How many of us can earn 1.2 million by just working. I don't think so, unless you are being a super highly paid C-suite professional, then perhaps you can make a few $100,000 a year, and over a period of 5 years, you can make 1 million. Otherwise, most of us cannot not even dream of making this kind of profit. But properties does offer the opportunity for you to make this kind of profit. Let's say it's not 1 million profit, at least a few $100,000 profit. Like what we see in the mass market itself, where people hold on like 10 years, like this project in D22, then make 600,000 profits itself. And South China Morning Post also did a survey among analysts, and these analysts actually point out that China and Singapore property market are seen as leading the recovery after this coronavirus thing. Do we have actual examples of that, or does that really happen? And if you look at this, they always say that Singapore market is likely to recover when successful control measures are lifted. So it means that this chart here shows you all the control measures that the government has put in since 2011. There are about 10 to be exact here. So if they do remove one to help the market, and this pent up demand may come back into the market and buy properties again. And we are seeing what? You can consider the whole situation like a dam being built on a river. This is the Mekong River. You have a lot of dams being built all the way from China and down to Cambodia itself. What the dam does is to regulate the water flow itself, so that when it's high on one side of the dam, they just open the dam and so open the sluice gate and let the water flow out to the downstream. So this pent-up demand or this control measure can also be seen as the sluice gate. Once you lift up the sluice gate, that means the water starts flowing in. That can be equated to demand coming back to the market and buying properties again. So in China, we are seeing that happening when they actually allow people to go back out to buy properties again. Their March property sales was triple of what they seen in February. So much for that pent-up demand in China. And not only that, this revenge spending, this is something that is mind-boggling beyond whatever people can imagine, is that people go to spend in the luxury shop, Hermes, and they clock in what? Singapore dollars 3.8 million a day after opening. This is the highest on record. Means that when people are being controlled and cooped up in their house, and when they are actually allowed to go back out again, where do they go? In China, they went back and then they spend in the economy. You can also put yourself in the shoe in your current situation right now. Every country around the whole world is sort of like in a lockdown. They have a lot of measures preventing you from visiting. If you go in, you need to be quarantined and so on and so forth. What will happen when all these quarantine measures around the world are lifted and you are free to travel there and free to return to Singapore without fear of being quarantined? Will you plan to fly out? I think the answer is yes. This, of course, is a booking number on Airbnb. Of course, in China right now, with still a lot of so-called travel restrictions around the world where you still need to be quarantined. That's why within China, people can't or don't want to be quarantined when they go to another country. What they are doing is that they are traveling within their own country. And this actually shows a very strong rebound in terms of Airbnb booking data. And this shows one thing is that rebound will come back and may be very fast and sharp. And for Singapore property market, of course, home prices, as I said earlier, has fallen 1% in the first quarter of the year. but this is actually less than the original fresh estimate. It shows one thing, that actually home prices are resilient in Singapore. And this is a very interesting chart which I lifted from MAS, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, in their macroeconomic review, which was out yesterday. Now, the color code here, from red all the way to green. Red means you are going to face a decrease in inflation. Whereas when you have green, that means you are going to see increase in the inflation itself. Accommodation, which means rental for properties, is in the green color zone. MAS is putting that in the green color zone, means they are seeing as rental as facing an increase in terms of inflation. It means rents are going to go up. Of course, the government also have other measures to help to support the whole market itself by allowing property owners to actually defer the mortgage payments. But bear in mind that when you defer the mortgage payment, you still need to pay back the amount that you defer subsequently. It's not a free lunch, you still need to pay back itself. So this measure is actually there to help the market, so that when these people can apply for all this to tide them over this difficult period, it means that they have actually less propensity to actually put their property up for distress sale. If you want to know the views on Huttons' views on this investment property itself, you may want to watch the news today. They just did an interview with me early this morning on our views on the rental market itself. The deferment of mortgage payment, we must stress here that it should be looked at as a last resort, because you still need to pay back the principal that you defer. So if you can still continue as a homeowner or as an investor, continue to pay the mortgage itself, look at refinancing. The SIBOR rates has been coming down. Now you actually can benefit from these lowest borrowing rates itself, and that will actually help to with you with a lot of this payment in this time where maybe the income is slightly affected. How much will that savings be? It can be in the region of few $100s a month, but all this depends on, of course, what is your loan amount as well as your loan tenure itself and the previous interest rate that you are facing. And we are talking about all this, then we need to come back to here, which I mentioned earlier, that the government actually has the right to actually suspend the government land sales, which they did before. And not just only in recent cycle, which I just now show you in 2009, they also did before during the Asia financial crisis, where they suspend the land sales. So these are some of the various tools that the government can actually pull out of its head to actually support the market, such that the market will stay stable and sustainable in the medium to long term. And then this chart here, I will probably take some time to explain this also. Remember just now we were sharing about the number of uncompleted unsold units in the market, which stands about 29,000. Now, when did this, and we said that the en bloc cycle actually started in 2016, possibly it will restart again in 2021. Why? Look at this. The number of unsold stock now is 29,000. Let's say we assume that this year we are going to sell 5,000. In the very bad scenario, 5,000 is like something like half of what we sold in 2019, which was 9,912. Let's say we sell 5,000. First quarter, we already sell 2,001. So maybe that leaves us with 3,000. So you net out 3,000 from this, you get 26,000 in these unsold units. Of course, you add in some of the government land sales that come in, you probably have something like 28,000. Then you move on to 2021. If the market volume, the demand itself, recovers back to the pre-pandemic level, which is 9,000 something, and then you take it away 9,000 from the 2021 the unsold unit itself, this will bring the number of unsold units down to 20,000. And when that happens, it also means that developer needs to go back to the market to buy land again. Now, developer has to continuously buy land in order to sustain their business operation, because they also have people on their payroll that they need to pay every month as well. So they can't be waiting all the way until that they have exhausted all their land and they have no units to sell anymore. Then they go back to the market to buy. Once they are assured that they will be able to sell out everything within the 5-year ABSD period, they will go into the market again. And we foresee that this might happen in 2021. And this will kickstart another cycle of buying land, could be through the en bloc cycle again. And for owners who are actually sitting on some of the properties, they might benefit from this en bloc cycle that can start sometime next year. Now, our outlook for 2020. Of course, this year, property market is going to be soft because of COVID-19. Already, the circuit breaker coming in April and May is going to affect the transaction number, transaction volume, everything. But we are unlikely to see a sudden drop in prices. Why? Two reasons. Number one is TDSR, the total debt servicing ratio. The second reason is, of course, the loan to value ratio. If you are buying property, this is your first property loan, you can borrow up to 75%. That means you need to put in 25% cash. That actually lowers the mortgage payment for the property. But if this property that you're buying is your second property loan, you can borrow up to 45%. That means you need to put in a lot of equity. This also lowers your mortgage payment as well. So it makes all this very, very low risk for a lot of buyers who are actually using a lot of cash itself. And we also see property loans itself over the past year, if I can remember correctly, in 2019, banks have been reporting that the loans that they loan out for property has been coming down. So it means that people are using more equity to buy properties itself. And then the total debt servicing ratio, it caps the mortgage repayment or installment at 60% of your income. And this is a cap from the government so that you don't overstretch yourself. So if anything happens, and also we need to say that this TDSR is based on an interest of 3.5%, not the current interest that you borrow from the bank, which could be 1.5 or even 2%, is 3.5. It means that there is also some buffer, safety buffer there for a lot of buyers in the market. That's why it's unlikely that there will be a drop in prices. And for now, it's very low interest rates. There's huge savings for buyers. Buyers could go in and buy and enjoy all this. Even for existing homeowners, you can actually look at refinancing itself to take advantage of the low interest rate. How low can interest rate go? We don't know. Some people say it can go as low as 0. But we do not have a very clear crystal ball that we can say interest rate go down to 0. And even if you were saying SIBOR rate will go down to 0, just bear in mind that for every mortgage loan that the bank lends to you, there is a floor rate which they will charge in the event of all this falling to 0. So it means that you will not see 0 interest rate for your property loan. That floor rate plus whatever premium that the bank is adding on to their SIBOR rates, you still have to pay that. So you can't exactly time the market where the interest rate is going to be 0 for you to refinance. But if you need to, do speak to your bankers to talk about refinancing. Now, the unsold stock is actually depleting, coming down since first quarter of 2019 and all the way now to what we have about 29,000. If the demand, people still continue to buy in 2020 as well in 2021, we may potentially see an upswing in 2021 because the last en bloc cycle actually started in 2016. And in 2021, that's where the developers will have to meet the ABSD due date for them to avoid any penalties on the so-called upfront remission of the ABSD itself. So they will want to sell out everything before 2021 itself. So when that happens, they will go back to the market again to buy land. And there are also many levers at the government disposal to actually support the market, which just now I showed the chart where we actually have a lot of measures that they put in place to control and to make sure the market remains at a stable and sustainable manner. So if they do review some of the measures there, then you may potentially unleash a wave of demand back into the market as well, then supporting the market itself. So then again, before I end off, I just want to reiterate this again. Follow us on social media if you want to stay in the know for all the property news, as well as subscribe to our newsletter, or you can approach your Huttons associate to receive a copy of the newsletter also. It can be done that way as well. And of course, I think on everybody's mind is when will this COVID-19 end? There is an interesting study done by SUTD where they actually try to predict when the COVID-19 will end around the world. So I just leave this off this morning. So for the world, they're expecting it end about May 30. That is where 97% of the cases are actually detected. How they do the whole thing, I leave it to, if you're interested, I leave it to you to go and read to find out. But these are all the dates that they have put in and estimate that this will end by this. Of course, the exact date is hard to say, but if you realize that the world, United States, as well as Japan, are in May, United Kingdom, Germany, and France are also in May. Why do I put some of these examples here? Because these are some of our major trading partners. Already in China, they are seeing very, very close to zero infections from COVID-19. And Wuhan itself, last COVID-19 patient has already been discharged. They are cautiously allowing travel within the country. So that is actually how a lot of countries around the world are slowly doing that, opening up their economy step by step to make sure that the chances of a second wave of infection happening is low. Of course, maybe you want to ask, say, where is Singapore on this whole COVID-19 prediction? Their estimate is that in May also, 97 of our cases will probably be detected by then. So the question now is, if all these pandemic are likely to end in May, are you ready with all this information that you have on hand to take advantage of the market situation? If you are, contact your preferred Huttons associate for an in-depth discussion. Thank you very much.